Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristen Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Mary Morton, PhD candidate and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empowered by Iron. This week, we're going to jump back into our segmented podcasts where we have 3 different topics we want to talk about today. We want to talk a little bit about masters athletes. What's that mean? What does that mean for you? And what do you need to change? We want to talk a little bit about dieting. You know, Kristen and I don't particularly love cutting or dieting, but here we are. We're going to talk about it. And then we're going to finish up with talking a little bit about medals and lifting. That's pretty broad, but you'll understand when we get there. Okay, so we reached out a while back and asked you all what you wanted to hear from us. And one request that we got was to discuss a little bit about masters lifters and what does it mean to be a masters lifter in terms of nutrition and training and recovery, and what do you all need to be doing differently than someone who's young and fresh like me.
Right.
I feel like I'm falling apart.
Fresh. I like that. Yeah.
So we do, if you guys don't know, we do have a resident masters athlete. Kristen is a competing masters athlete in weightlifting.
Yes, I'm a master's weightlifter in powerlifting. I'm still sub-masters for like 2 more years.
You're not old yet.
I'm not old yet.
In powerlifting terms. Weightlifting terms, you're there.
Weightlifting terms, I'm ancient. So basically, one of the things I kind of giggled a little when we got this question about masters lifters, because I was like, well, all my suggestions are kind of fall in the category of masters lifters because I am a masters lifter. But you know, when I really think about it, we do have some specific needs. And so I read a little bit about masters lifters' needs specifically in preparation for this episode. And one of the things that I kept seeing over and over is that the training doesn't need to be that different. What we have to manage is recovery and fatigue levels. Those are the biggest things that we have to manage. So I think one of the big things is that, and I think all masters lifters know this, is that we have less tolerance for high volume training than our 20-something counterparts. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do less in a training session, although it could mean that. But you might need to train less days. And so that's been the case for me. I still train just as hard as I did several years ago, but I noticed, I guess it was a year ago or maybe a little longer, I cut my training back to 4 days a week from 5 days a week. And that made a huge difference. I also changed my diet up at the same time. But I started PRing again. I started feeling strong again, as opposed to kind of feeling like I was limping through training and not really, I just felt like I was like spinning my wheels and wasn't really getting anywhere. And I was constantly tired. I was dragging all through training. So that was a huge signal to me. And finally talked to my coach about it. And he was like, yeah, I've been trying to tell you to cut your training back for like a year now. And I was apparently not listening. Well, I thought it meant I was like, couldn't handle it. And I'm like, no, I can handle this. And then I realized, oh yeah, I'm actually a better athlete now that I train less.
Yeah. And I remember that happening. You were like, well, I guess I'm going to try this 4 days. And then you did. And it was, you were just PRing left and right. You were feeling recovered. You weren't feeling achy or, you know, besides the usual aches and pains of training, you weren't feeling those extra aches and pains. Right. So it was an overall positive transition, even though it just took you a while to say, okay, let's do it.
Yes, exactly. And so I think one of the other things that comes with managing your recovery then is listening to your body, because there are times where, you know, so anyone who's did any sort of sports when they were younger, especially, have maybe been hard on their bodies. I really beat the crap out of my body in my 20s. So I have a lot of old injuries. And there's certain times where, oh, my back is kind of bothering me a little bit. I'm going to modify my training today. Or, and I used to take that as a sign of weakness. And I was really afraid to modify anything whatsoever. And then, realize that I would end up injuring myself again. So watching out for those little signals that your body's giving you, like, hey, I need a little break. And you can just train around things. The one thing that I've learned is that if you take just a couple days off or modify your training a couple of days, maybe a week, you're going to be able to train harder in the long run as opposed to just hammering through it, hurting yourself, and then having to take months off. It's not worth it. And I think particularly as masters athletes, we need to continue to train for as long as we can, and we have to be smart about it. So it's not ideal to have to take months off of training.
Unlike those dumb 20-year-olds, right? We can just be dumb about it.
Right.
Let's just PR every day.
You can just PR every day. You can walk into the gym, not even warm up, start snatching 60 kilos. You guys are crazy.
I did warm up that day.
So yeah, Mary's learned by watching like old fart over here. Oh, I don't want to end up like that. I maybe should warm up.
Yeah, because even for me, I've learned that even though I can power through injuries,
yeah,
that doesn't mean I should.
Right.
And since seeing Kristen go through all the injuries that Kristen has gone through, we won't talk about those. But it's taught me that if I feel something that's off, that's not just like I'm training because I'm sore, that I need to stop and let that heal before I move on. Otherwise, it's going to be a big deal. Yeah. So that applies to everyone,
right?
But specifically masters athletes.
Well, right, because masters athletes, our bodies don't heal as fast, and so what someone in their 20s, they might be over in 2 weeks. It might take us a month or longer.
Yeah, you guys are like, you ever go into like your miscellaneous drawer and you pull out a rubber band and you're like, this rubber band's great. And it's very elastic. And then you go into the drawer and you pull out a rubber band that's like really crusty and you pull it and it snaps.
Did you just call me a crusty rubber band?
But I love you. My crusty rubber band.
That's awesome. Well, all right. So that is actually something we should talk about. Speaking of like frail, crusty things, mobility sometimes is an issue for us, right? It is. And if you are a weightlifter or if you follow weightlifting and you've seen any of the masters lifters that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s at meets, you know what I'm talking about, because there are some amazing masters lifters out there. They have a hard time like getting all the way down to the bar. And then everything is either like a power clean or a power snatch, because that hip and ankle mobility and shoulder mobility really starts to decrease with age. And some of that's arthritis, some of it's old injuries. There's a lot of reasons for it. Just our tissues aren't as elastic as they used to be. So trying to stay up on stretching and mobility as a masters athlete is really important. One thing, I've talked about it before, but one of the major difference for me in my training in the last couple of years is stretching after every training session. And I know a lot of elite lifters, even if they're masters, don't do a whole lot of stretching. But I'm not one of those people that can do that. It's really improved my lifting. So, and we want to stay as flexible as we can.
Well, and even for me, I follow in Kristen's footsteps a lot. I took up the after training stretching, and I never did it before because, in high school you rebel against stretching after or before.
Well, stretching's not cool, right?
No, and usually it's your coach making you do those fucking arm circles and then touch your toes for 10 seconds and whatever. So it was always stupid and I hated it. But now I do it because if I don't, I get home and it's a 10-minute drive back to my house. My back is tight. My legs are tight. And then my hips are tight. And so the rest of the night and into the next day, everything hurts. But if I take like 2 seconds and stretch, like 15 minutes and stretch, I negate all those issues.
Right. And the other thing too, along those lines, is that for masters athletes, I think choosing the right movements for your body is really important. And that goes back to the old injury thing or mobility issues. For instance, once I gained the mobility to be able to high bar squat, I lost the ability to be able to low bar squat. I just tried low bar squatting again because I'm now competing in powerlifting. And I realized that my hips can't handle low bar squatting. I have an old hip injury that I thought was gone because I've been high bar squatting for 3 years. It hasn't bothered me one bit, and went back to low bar squatting, and it was getting to the point where it was affecting my training. So even though I compete in powerlifting, I don't low bar squat. It doesn't work for me. So there might be movements that you have to kind of change. You'll see at masters meets, you'll see at masters weightlifting meets, you'll see that to the extent that people might do a split snatch or a split clean because they can't land underneath the bar like they used to be able to. So just choose movements that work for your body. And then I think that the last thing that I have to talk about for masters lifters is managing expectations. This is a big one. This is one that no one likes to talk about. If you were a high level athlete in your 20s and you're now competing in powerlifting or weightlifting or CrossFit or whatever in your 40s, 50s, you know this, you know that you're probably not going to hit those old PRs. If you were an elite athlete, those were really high numbers that are probably going to be difficult to hit as a masters lifter. If you are kind of getting started out in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, well, you'll continue to build strength. But your strength, if you're training alongside people in their 20s, you may get a little frustrated because if you start on the same day and you follow the same program, but maybe you rest a little more, like you should, you're not going to put on strength at the same rate someone in their 20s is. And some of that has to do with, we are masters athletes, just anyone as they age, are less efficient at using amino acids for muscle protein synthesis. So that's actually a case for maybe increasing protein if you are a masters athlete.
A little bit. We're not talking about going up to that 1 pound per pound or 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's absurd. But increasing it, what would you say, like 15 to 20%?
20 to 25%. So the studies that I've read show that people over 65 should increase 20 to 25%, whether they're athletes or not athletes, but particularly if they're athletes. So there's no studies on this age curve of what our protein needs are. So we know 65 and over, it needs to increase. If you're somewhere not 20s, maybe 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe you want to try adding more protein. I think the case for that is if you're managing your recovery, you're managing your fatigue, you're not overtraining, and you're still feeling like constantly sore, adding in more protein, that might be a good thing. But make sure that you're also sleeping and that you're just recovering well, eating.
Simple.
Yeah. So that's really it for masters athletes, I think.
So I think it sounds like as you get older, you just need to be a little kinder to your body. And as you end up doing anyway, you just need to listen and then act upon that listening to your body.
Yes. Yep. And I'm all for the 4-day-a-week training cycle for masters athletes. I think it's good.
Yeah, that's been really, really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, to switch gears, since we ended on protein, let's start with some nutrition stuff. Let's talk a little bit about dieting. You know, on this podcast, we advocate for you to eat where you're at, stay strong, get stronger, and see where you lie. Wherever you lie, that's where we preach you should compete.
Yeah.
The only time that we really condone cutting is if you have a chance at an elite total or moving up to the next level, whatever that is. But that's a very small percentage of us. Most of us are just really lifting and we're trying to get better. And that's going to take us eating and growing. That's just how that works. But there is a time. And if you want to do this anyway, there's a time that you may want to cut. So something that I think has been ingrained in our system in the fitness industry, not necessarily the strength industry, but the fitness industry, is this idea that we can do a whole body transformation in the span of 8 weeks.
Right.
You can lose 50 pounds in 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever. And sure, if you're above a certain body fat percentage and you start eating healthy, that's totally possible. But you would have to be, in the 30 to 35 plus percent body fat category for that to happen. Otherwise, if I lost, 50 pounds in 8 weeks, I'd lose a leg.
You don't have 50 pounds to lose.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So if you have basically the higher body fat percentage you have, the easier it is for you to lose weight rapidly. If you're already rather lean, if you're below 20% body fat for women, you've got to go a little bit slower. And so I have a lot of athletes that come to me wanting to cut weight for specific meets. So they're trying to either get on the podium for a national level meet, or they're trying to qualify for an international level meet, and they want to cut to the next lower weight class. And sometimes I'll say, "Yep, we can do it," and sometimes I say, "That is not enough time." And really, what it comes down to is that you have to balance wanting to get stronger, right? We're all training to get stronger with this desire to decrease body weight. And while you can get stronger on a cut, it needs to be done as slow as possible, really, so that you can maintain as much strength and continue to get stronger. Otherwise, you're going to sacrifice your strength. And what in the world is the purpose of going through a really hard weight cut only to lose strength and not even qualify for what you're trying to qualify for in the first place? And so, yeah, I think a lot of people have some unrealistic expectations about how much weight they can cut. And I tend to be really conservative. I'm really, really conservative with my athletes because I know how hard they worked to gain their strength. And so I don't like athletes to lose much more than half a pound a week, unless if they're over 25% body fat, we can go higher than that. But then the next question is, how long can we sustain that? Because you're not going to sustain a pound a week over 6 months. That's just we can't do that. We need more time.
Well, and then you run into issues with hormone health. I mean, exactly. You can't be in a caloric deficit that long and have it be good for you.
Exactly. And the more cuts that you do. So if you're constantly trying to cut really fast and then you kind of bounce back and then your next meet, you're going to cut really fast. That damages your metabolism and your hormones. So if you remember one of our very first episodes, we had Kristen Pope on, and she talked about that we asked her what was something that she wished she knew way back then, that she knows now. And she said, I wish I wouldn't have cut weight so many times, because she thought she'd still be lifting in a lower weight class. So
yeah. Well, and then she also, if any of you follow on her YouTube channel, with the new weight classes that came out in Olympic weightlifting, she talked about, because all these people wanted to cut, maybe in the middle of a weight class, they want to cut. And she came on and said exactly what we said, which is you should lift where you're at. If you're not an elite level, it's not the difference between you getting on the national stage and not, then don't cut, don't waste your time, just get stronger. And by national stage, for those of you who follow weightlifting, I don't mean the American series, the American Open series. That's a national level thing. Sure. It's great fun, but it really encompasses all levels. I'm talking nationals, American Open, powerlifting worlds, powerlifting nationals. Those are the ones that we're talking about.
Yep.
If that 5 pound difference, that 2 kilo difference is between you competing and not, then by all means do it. But if that's not, what's the point if you're going to lose strength?
Right. Absolutely. The only caveat that I would say would be if you are overweight and you feel like you're unhealthy, then obviously let's get you at a healthier body weight. Then that's fine. We can do that. But we're going to do that in a manner that we're going to preserve as much of your strength as possible.
Well, and even that, there are some elite level lifters, both in powerlifting and weightlifting, who, they're in the bigger categories, but they have prioritized their strength over necessarily being smaller, which is totally fine. You just, like we've talked about before, it just needs to be, what are your priorities? Are your priorities first to feel and look healthy, or whatever look healthy means, feel healthy?
Yeah.
Or is your first priority to put on strength? And then, it just has to be these priorities. Because I bet if you ask some of these very elite lifters who are what we might categorize as the heavies or the super heavies, if they would want to cut, their answer would be, hell no. I'll lose strength and I'm right where I want to be, and it just depends on where you're at.
Right. I totally agree. Could not agree more.
Okay. So I think to sum that up, basically, don't have unrealistic expectations for cutting. If you want to lose, let's say 15 pounds, you need to figure out if you're going to lose 15 pounds and about half a pound a week, that means it's probably going to take you 30 weeks to get there.
Right.
Honest to God, you probably don't want to be dieting for 30 weeks.
Right. Unless one of the things we didn't talk at all about is dehydrating to make weight. And that's a whole nother category. But I find I work with all level athletes. I have some very elite lifters I work with, and I have some beginner lifters I work with, and everyone in between. And pretty much all except for the elite lifters never want to do any sort of water cut. They don't want to do any sort of dehydration, and that kind of scares them. And so that's something to really consider, is how much weight are you going to lose each week?
Water cuts don't feel good. You feel like shit.
Yeah.
If you've ever had diarrhea or have puked your brains out, the next day you're feeling that dehydration. That's about how you feel.
Right. It's not fun.
No, not fun. Okay. So that is that. Again, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email us at empoweredbyiron@gmail.com. And as a reminder, Kristen does offer one-on-one flexible dieting coaching. So she's also an amazing resource for you all. Okay.
Thanks,
what
Mary.
is our... You're welcome. My crusty old rubber band. What is our third topic?
Our third topic focuses on something we've actually talked about a long time ago. But it's really about not comparing yourself to other people, and specifically not comparing your performance to other people. I think it is so common for anyone. So
can I build a scenario?
Please.
Okay. So I travel to Texas typically to compete with my team, which I love, and I'm happy to do it. And my coach is all about rewards. So she will make sure that every weight class has a first, second, and third place medal, and then there's an overall Wilks winner for the competition. So if I'm lucky as a now 71 kilo lifter, if I'm lucky, there's 2 or 3 other girls in my class. But typically, like the last meet, there was 2. So I got second of 2. So one could say I got last, but one could say I got second in my weight class. But either way, I got a medal. So if someone asked me how I did, I could say I got second in my weight class, and they'd think, oh, that's amazing. But really, I got last in my weight class because there were 2 people. So it's all about... We wanted to talk about that kind of concept. Like it's a local meet. Yeah, I did good for myself, but there's 2 of us in a weight class. Like the medal means nothing. Sorry, Julie.
So, but it's great you got one.
I'm happy to have it. It's a great medal.
But okay, so how did you perform in that meet?
I did really good personally. I was very proud of myself.
Good.
I was a little angry that the girl who was in my weight class, she was supposed to be in the weight class below, but she couldn't sweat out that 0.1 kilo in the last minute. So I could have got gold just to have a gold medal.
But you would have been the only one.
Right, but it didn't matter. It was like people said, congratulations, you got a medal. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, but I got last. That doesn't matter. Now, if I got second place at a national level meet where there was 50 other women in my class, sure, that's a different deal.
Totally different. Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing I wanted to talk about is like medals versus performance, because here's the thing. There were two people, including yourself, in your weight class. Okay. You could have had the worst meet of your life aside from bombing out and still gotten that medal. And you wouldn't have been happy about that at all.
I've been so pissed. People are like, what did you get? And I'm like, I sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. If you only made one lift in each, one snatch and one clean and jerk, you would have been pissed.
Oh, I would have been so mad at myself.
So your performance is what matters. And I think that it's really common in sports that have placements. And people that don't know a lot about lifting, they'll say, I've had this happen to me. People say, oh, I know you had a meet. How did you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I PR'd this lift and I PR'd that lift and I did exactly what I wanted to do or whatever. And they're like, yeah, but what place did you get? I'm like, what? Why does it matter what place I got? Like I was not there to compete against anyone else. I mean, in all of my meets, I always have certain numbers that I want to hit, obviously, because I'm a numbers person. I have certain objectives of each meet, and that's how I measure my performance, not based on what place I got. I can recall a big meet that I did a couple of years ago, and I really wanted to get a higher placement than what I got. And when I look back on it now, it's really silly. Like, why did what I wanted to do was to PR and do my absolute best that I could. And I remember talking to my husband, who's a former elite athlete, and he was like, sports aren't about medals. He was like, it's about beating yourself. And that's coming from an elite athlete. And I was like, yeah, you know what? You're right. And that really started to change how I looked at things. And I feel a lot better about competing in meets now since then. Like, I don't care what anyone else is doing. And neither should you.
Well, I think it's hard when you first start because you really want that positive affirmation. Right. And if you haven't quite understood that lifting is you versus you, that positive affirmation could come from you did get a third place out of 4 people or whatever. And yeah. I think we all start there because my first meet that I got a medal, I was very excited and I did a really shitty job, but I got a medal, and I was very proud of that because I had done something and I had accomplished something. But then as time went on, I almost spoke to my coach and said, why do you keep buying medals? Like, yeah. I get that it's cool, but everyone has 3 people in their weight class. Everyone's getting a fucking medal. What is this? Participation trophy? Yeah. And so I think it's the evolution of the athlete. If you're at the point where you are very happy to get a medal, that's awesome. And I think that you should celebrate that. But Absolutely. Then as time goes on, you're going to understand that it doesn't matter who your local competition is. You are your competition. Yeah. And if you can be the person you were at last meet, that's all that matters. Right. I was just talking to my coach yesterday and he said, well, we were talking about some meets that I have coming up. And he said, well, what are your goals? And I was like, my goals have kind of changed and I was a little unsure. And I was like, I don't know, let me get back to you on that. But the biggest issue is I was like, I can't control what anyone else does on meet day. I can't control who shows up. I could be the best or I could be the worst. Or who makes a weight class or who doesn't. Right. You can't control any of those variables. All you can control is your training leading up to it and how you perform on meet day. And that is what matters. So if you got a medal and you performed awesome, hell yeah, congrats. I'm proud of you. If you got a medal and you didn't perform well, I'm still happy if you're happy that you got a medal, but I bet you're probably not happy with your performance. And I think that it's just so common in our society to see how people measure up to other people. And it doesn't matter because we're all at different points. What matters is if you improved something. something,
Mhm.
anything. Yeah, which is just crazy to me because you're right. Like you want to see where you measure up to someone else, but it doesn't matter. I don't know if any of you guys follow either Bama Burr, which if you haven't, what are you doing? Or Maddie Rogers, but something that they talk a lot about is, head down, eyes forward, or put your work hat on and just move forward. Stop looking, put your blinders on, stop looking at what other people are doing because that's just going to pull you back. It's like when you go on Facebook and see where your high school friends are. Like so-and-so is already married. So-and-so has had a baby. So-and-so has a great career going. And what am I doing? I'm sitting here and doing a fucking podcast. Well,
this podcast is awesome.
I was just kidding. Please don't be insulted, my lovely fellow friends. But you know what I mean? Like we're always comparing, well, if I had done this, maybe I'd be someplace else. But you just got to put your head down and work and just keep going forward. You'll get better over time. And only you will know if you've done well.
Yeah. And I think that that's super important because there is nothing that will shake your confidence more than thinking like if you had a really good day in the gym and you PR'd and you're really happy and you get on Instagram and see someone who's maybe a competitor who just lifted a lot more than you, you're going to be like, fuck, I suck. But no, you don't because you PR'd today. And so I think that kind of mindset can be really dangerous. So don't worry about what anyone else is doing.
Right. Pro tip, go unfollow every single lifter you've ever followed on Instagram, except us. And then go follow puppy pages, kitten pages, animal rescue pages. Like your happiness will be through the roof.
I'm down.
Down?
Yep.
All right. I think that's it. I think that's all of our categories. Yeah.
That's everything.
Broken it down, discussed.
If you guys have questions about any of that stuff, shoot us an email at empoweredbyiron@gmail.com. You can always DM us on Instagram.
Slide into those DMs.
At Empowered by Iron. And we're on Facebook too at Empowered by Iron. And we have a Facebook group page that you should join if you haven't already. It's called Women in Strength Athlete Resource. And if you have questions about training or lifting, nutrition, or anything that you want some people to give you some advice on, it's a good place to ask.
An athlete-focused place.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
Talk to you later. Bye.